Aho, everybody. Here we are on a river that shall remain unnamed. I'm gonna do a video on how to row a drift boat. Just kidding. That's way too hard to teach. Most of the time I just end up saying that you gotta go out there and do it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over a guide's pet peeves. This will be a series of videos. And these are things that when a client does them, every guide just like cringes. Every guide, we talk about these things at the bar after our trips when we're trying to drown our sorrows after untangling 40 lines and same set a million times. But in all seriousness, these are things that will serve as huge time wasters for you and the source of a lot of your frustration. So the quicker you can remove all of these habits from your fly fishing, the happier you'll be and the more fish you'll catch. Because believe me, it's something that everybody does. These are things that I do and I still go out and fish on my own. It's not like I'm hating on anybody. These are just the foundational things that you should do when you're fly fishing, with a guide or without a guide. So let's see. So the first thing people do wrong when they're setting the hook is they don't set the hook. You've done all of this research, you've watched these YouTube videos, you've got online and Facebook and Instagram, and you've had all your ducks are in a row. You have the right fly, you get a good drift, finally you get a fish to take your fly, and then you don't set the hook. The most pivotal, important thing that you can do to put a fish on the end of your line, and you don't do it. People will get a good drift going, and then when it's time to set the hook, they'll just stop right in the middle. Then the lines ends up coming back in their face, the line ends up hitting the boat, ends up hitting their fishing partner, hitting the guide, because they don't trust that there's a fish there. Instead of just setting the hook, they're thinking about why they're setting the hook, what did they not see. The time from eye to brain to arm there's lag there. For whatever reason, people don't like to set the hook. So what do you want to do? You want to make a cast, good mend, keep your rod tip low. And the reason why you keep your rod tip low is when you strike, you want to come from here low all the way up out of the water. You get a wide arc of strike. Your arc is like this. So you get to pull the line and the leader and the flies all the way out of the water this way. If I'm fishing with my rod up here, I've already cut my strike distance in half. So all I can do is really strike from here down back. So what I've done is I've taken in my reaction time, the time that it takes for my fly rod to react down to the fly line, down to the flies, and I've cut it in half by holding my rod tip up. You're not Euro fishing. When you're fishing with an indicator, keep your rod tip low and point it at the strike indicator. That way when you set the hook, you can come all the way from down there and then set the hook. All the way from the water surface, all the way up behind you, and then set the hook. So when you set the hook or when you cast, you want to think of this plane that the rod moves on. And this plane should go up like this. It should come from the surface of the water up behind you like there's a church steeple. Act like you want to throw your flies. There's a church steeple behind you. You want to put your flies on the back of that. You want to throw your flies up on the top of that church steeple, up high like that. You don't want to use your wrist, break your wrist and bring your flies back towards you. See how I ducked from my guide sixth sense instincts, my Jedi instincts, because I know this terrible hook set with my wrist has an ability to set the flies in the back of my back of my head. So instead of breaking your wrist and coming back on a plane like that, you want to move your arm up and behind you, up and above your head. Use your whole arm. Imagine how many muscles you have in your forearm versus how many muscles you have in in your entire arm. You know, you're casting all day using your forearm because you're using your wrist like this, which you shouldn't do. And then you get back to the hotel and you're like, oh, my arm's so tired. It's because you're not casting the right way. You shouldn't be breaking your wrist hardly at all. You have a lot more muscles in your bicep, tricep, deltoid, all of these than you do in just your little forearm. Unless you've been using your forearms a lot, then you might have some other kinds of issues. But you'll notice that I use my elbow as the fulcrum most of the time. I cast up, and then I make my back cast, and then my forward cast. Back cast, and then my forward cast. Same thing when you're setting the hook. Why do I go over casting so much? Because when you set the hook, you treat it like a recast. All you do, I'll come all the way out of the water. If nothing's there, get it right back out. You're going to cast, give it a mend. Let's say the guide says set, set, set. Come all the way out of the water. Nothing's there, get it right back out. Half the time that you do that, there won't be a fish on there. It doesn't mean that you're super late. It doesn't mean that the guide is messing with you or that you caught the bottom. It just means that the reaction time between the flies that are 9 feet, 8 feet down below the indicator, the fish takes the fly and it goes all the way up the leader of the movement. Then it pulls your indicator. Then you see it. The guide says to set, or you tell your brain to set. You go to set the hook, and that lag time is already too late. These fish are super smart, and they live. Remember, the fish don't have hands. So what they're doing when they're babies is they're eating sticks, they're eating rocks, they're eating all sorts of different things that flow in the river. And if they didn't get good at spitting them out and rejecting the stones and the sticks, then they would die. They don't know what food items are, so they'll just eat a bunch of variety of food items, and then they'll reject them by pushing water out of their mouths or turning their head, shaking their head, whatever it takes to get that food item out. They do the same thing with your flies, and it takes about 1.5 to 2 seconds before your fly gets spit out of the fish's mouth. So if you don't set the hook, you've gone through all of that trouble. You've planned the hotel and the YouTube videos and all the studying. You've tied the knots, tied the flies. You've done everything but what you should be doing to actually put the fish on the end of your line, and that is to set the hook. So guide tells you to set. Hopefully it's just 1 or 2 sets, not like 5 sets. Come back, nothing's there, just get it right back out. You get this automatic in your head that when you're fishing, you're just a setting machine. Like my best clients are just setting machines. They're just whack, get right back out there. Whack, get right back out there without any hesitation. What you're doing is you're putting your flies in front of a lot of fish all the time. The fish are taking your flies, and the indicator's not even moving. So if you do get an opportunity when the indicator moves and the fish have actually eaten your fly, you have to be able to set that hook in the corner of the fish's mouth, hopefully, before the fish rejects the food item. And remember, 1.5 to 2 seconds before they spit that hook. Fish don't have hands, so they're always testing out their environment from the time they're babies by eating sticks and rocks and cigarette butts and all of this stuff, and then they get really good at spitting out those food items so they don't die. So what do they do when they take your size 22 zebra midge, KF wing, and they realize that it's not soft like a real midge? They spit it. 1.5 to 2 seconds and it's gone. Your opportunity is gone for that fish. So you have to get really good at setting the hook fast and all the way through the wide arc.